Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq. Joining me is Mark Ein, Chairman of Kastle Systems, to discuss how COVID-19 will change commercial office buildings, security, and the experience for American workers. Mark, it's great to have you with us. Welcome to Trade Talks.
Thanks for having me, Jill.
So what do you think office buildings might look like when and if we return back to the workspace?
Yeah, so people are starting to return to the workspace, but for people to do it en masse, I think we're going to have to rethink the office environment. If you think about a commercial office building, it's an ecosystem that's made up of a number of stakeholders. You have the building owner, the tenants, the people that work there, the visitors, and the suppliers, the people who clean and service the building. And to make it safe, we have to create a paradigm, a framework where everyone can come together and keep each other safe. That's what we've done at Kastle. And it's a four-pillared framework that hits a lot of different elements that together we think, and our clients think, because they're embracing it, is the office environment, at least in the age of coronavirus.
What are typical concerns buildings and tenants have when it comes to a safe place to return to work?
Yeah, so there's a number of things. First of all, is obviously social distancing. Is how do we make sure that people keep appropriate distance and spaces don't get crowded? And that's one of the things that we focus on through our access control system is scheduling when people come and when they leave, so you don't have big rushes at the same time. Either limiting or scheduling visitors or eliminating visitors, depending on that. Creating alerts when spaces get too crowded. So social distancing is one of them. The other is just basic screening, is just making sure that people who shouldn't be in a building because they either have symptoms or they're known to have coronavirus don't come in. But then similarly making it easy for those that we know are healthy or may have the antibodies to get in quicker. If you think a little bit about the experience we have in the airport, there's elements of that are going to be pulled into getting into an office building. And then the last thing I'd say that's a big piece of it is trying to eliminate shared surfaces. If you think about your experience going into an office, you and others touch the door, you touch the elevator button, you touch the floor. And so we're trying to make as many of those contactless where you would walk up to a building, the front door would open, you can call the elevator from an app on your phone, you can tell it what floor you're going to, you go to your tenant suite, it knows you're authorized, it opens. And then the same on the way out.
I'm just trying to wrap my head around this because we're based in Times Square, New York City, where we're a studio and there's just people in and out all the time from all over the globe. How do you make sure people infected with COVID-19 don't enter the office space? I mean, how personal do we have to get with our guests?
Yeah, so I think at one point the notion was, well, we're going to have a easy, fast, affordable test that everyone can take going in. And I think we all realize that's not going to be the case. So you've got to use other measures. The first is, for instance, people at Nasdaq, if you know someone has coronavirus, you're going to say, don't come to work, but you're also going to turn off their access to the building so they don't decide to come in and they can't get in. Short of that, we think that people should use questionnaires, both for their employees and tenants when they come, and they just answer just like when you go to an airport and they ask you basic security questions, so that if someone may have the symptoms, might surface that. Next would be temperature checks, which aren't perfect, but they're a pretty good screen. And either you can have someone taking your temperature, or through thermal cameras, you could actually step up to a kiosk, it can tell it automatically, and then either let you in or not. Those are some of the things that we're using today to start to get people back to work.
How quickly can these elements come online?
Now. I mean, the nice thing about this is a lot of this is just repurposing technology that's already in a building that has a good access control system like Kastle or others for this purpose, and then just adding incremental layers specifically suited for COVID. And so we're working with a lot of buildings. In fact, some are already online and there are rapidly more coming online.
And to wrap up, and I want to go back to something that I touched on before, how can an office balance safety and privacy? As a guest, do I want Nasdaq or any other company to know that much about me? Do I want my employer to know that much about me? Your health is intimate to you. So how do you balance that appropriately?
Yeah, and look, I think, well, first of all, healthcare privacy is an absolute, it's a necessity. So you have to know that if you have the disease, that it's not going to go beyond someone who already might know it. So for instance, if you have COVID and your employer knows it, they can turn off your access or turn on your access We don't know that that's why your access was turned on and off. It's just it was turned off. But I think that's one of the issues all of us as a country and a society have to decide. I mean, the countries that have done the best job at making the virus go away were ones that made that trade-off a little bit more aggressively than we're typically used to here. But if you think about it, it's the same thing when you go to an airport. If you're willing to give more information, your fingerprint, your retinal scan, you can go through clear and get through quicker. You can give somewhat less information, have TSE pre-check. If you don't want to give it, you just have to have a more rigorous check. I think that's the same mindset that we'll have here. If you're willing to give a little more, you can get in easier. If not, you're just going to have a more rigorous screen.
That's a great point, Mark. Thanks so much for joining us on Trade Talks.
Thanks for having me.
All right, and thanks for joining me. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.